I don't even remember who I have at this point.
Tom, you have Tyler Algier, Mike Boone, and George Pickens.
Fuck. All right, I'm doing poorly at this game so far, but that's okay. What up, everyone? Live at this point, we're gonna hang out for a minute before we get things rolling. Jacob, I see you're rocking that Tennessee Volunteer hoodie.
Oh, baby, yeah.
How are you feeling? Are you still? Oh, and Billy's got the Knoxville, Tennessee hat in solidarity.
It's the best I could do.
How are you feeling? Like I feel like I was on an emotional ride with you on Saturday.
I mean, that was just absolutely ridiculous game. First of all, people watching, like the biggest question that, there you go, Lucas. Biggest question that people, will give me is like, why the hell do you root for a team in the southeastern United States? You're from Canada. And I think that's like a very fair question. I mean, Tom knows, like, you're a Rutgers fan.
I know.
Right. The thing is, when you're in Canada, sure, like I root for the U of M Bisons in a sense. That's like where I went to school.
Guelph Griffins,
and,
right?
Like, by all means, if Canadian college football had like anywhere near the culture of American college football, I would be like such a backer of the Bisons. I mean, even now I'm at UBC. I don't like feel the same allegiance to UBC that I feel to U of M, but I would go to Thunderbirds games and I would tailgate. I would do all that shit. Canada college football like just sucks. Like, I'm not saying like the sport sucks. I'm not saying the players suck. I'm not saying that, but the culture around it is like totally lacking, right? You would never see 100,000 people dressed in orange in a stadium, tearing down goalposts and marching them through a city. That's bonkers. And so I love football, and there's like a nationally televised competitive league of football. Am I going to not choose a team? No, I'm going to choose a team. So when I was like 6 years old and I'm a Colts fan, I'm like, well, where did Peyton Manning go to school? And I found out that he went to the Orange School, Tennessee. And so I picked them, and I pick a team. I'm committed. Tom calls me the flip-flopper in Dynasty. I do not flip-flop on my teams. I pick one, and despite them being worst,
you're the worst Colts fan I've ever seen, because you're a bigger fan of
any other
Giants. You're a bigger fan of like.
No, I don't pick other teams. I bet on other teams. I don't pick other teams. No, I would only ever label myself as a Colts fan. I root for the success of teams that I bet on, for sure. And I'm like generally invested in certain players that I love. But in college football, no, like I root for Tennessee. I do root for North Dakota State also, just because they were so close by to Winnipeg, and they're
we have to.
But otherwise, like, no. So I've rooted for Tennessee. They've sucked my entire life, like just atrocious. I rooted for them during the Tyler Bray years, the Quentin Dormady year, the Jarrett Garantano years, the Josh Dobbs year. That was fun. The Josh Dobbs era was a little bit fun, but not that fun. And now the Hendon Hooker era is by far the best era that I've ever experienced. They're number 3 in the nation. They beat Bama for the first time since 2006.
That's a 3A,
which is before I even got an NCAA football game. So like I was hardly a committed fan before my first NCAA football game, which was in 2009. And so this has been a truly, truly fun ride. I was like super emotionally invested in the game, as people could tell from my Twitter. I mean, I'll never feel like the same appeal that people who are like from there feel. Obviously, it would be a completely different experience, but I can't imagine how much fun it must have been to be at the game. I mean, so cool.
It's like, and I get that as a Rutgers fan. Like, it was really good for a while, like Ray Rice and, the McCourties, and then Ray Rice went real sour. Now I got Pacheco, like, who's like the best Rutgers player in the NFL right now, which is sad. But I mean, I get it, man. That is such an incredible thing. Guys, I think we're ready to get going. Let's kick this thing off, yeah? Oh boy, what a program. It's going to be absolutely wild today. I love it here. This is, of course, the Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast Network. This is episode 169 of the network. This is the flagship program, the Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast, presented by the Fantasy Points Media Group. absolutely cannot wait to get this thing rocking. Love Fantasy Points. You can head over to fantasypoints.com. Their podcast schedule is insane. Ton of great affiliates, lots of great information. Their data department is soon to launch. Can't wait for that. Really couldn't have got here without everyone else. Also, if you haven't already, we have hit 200 plus subscribers on YouTube finally. If you're not there already, you need to get over there and you need to hit the subscribe button. Like, I just think that it's like, we're here. It costs you nothing to hit the button. I think that's the most important thing. Phenomenal. So, guys, exactly 100 and nice episodes. Impressive. Thank you for that. Thanks for that, Matthew. I was wondering if I was going to make that reference, but look, we don't want to dick around too much. We want to get right into it. We have a conversation today. I guess I should do. I, of course, am your host of the most Thomas Hands. I am Tom Simple FF. With me, as always, is at Big Billy FF, rejoining us after an absence last week. That's _RTDB.
I was here.
That's why I'm saying joining us after.
You check that. Yeah, you check that as a suffix, as a prefix.
It sounded like you said joining after.
I can see the confusion. I can see the confusion. This is like one of those let's eat grandma situations.
Oh,
yeah.
You know, it's like where you put the comma.
Okay, look.
I just want to make sure I'm not being falsely accused of something.
Okay, two smart people. For the other dum-dums that never would have picked up on that, Jakob wasn't here last week. So now coming back is our other co-host, Jakob Sanderson at FF_RTDB.
I was not here last week.
To be clear,
Billy was here. Technically, since I wasn't there, I actually can't confirm whether Billy was there, but I'll believe.
Watch the show, but that's fine.
I'll have to grind the tape.
I can't believe I just got hosed over a comma. Like, this is what have we come to? Okay, look, today we're gonna do something that I think is one of the more popular things to do at this point of the year. So we're gonna hop on it as well. We're talking running backs, a topic that can be both scary, it can be dark and gloomy, it can be uncomfortable to think about where your dynasty teams are at. But running backs seem to be what make the world go around, at least the conversation world go around. What do you do with them? Today we're going to talk about it and have a look into what we think the landscape is kind of going to look like in 2023 / the end of this year. And then, of course, we're going to revisit it because that's what we do. So first, I just want to ask, does anyone have any news type things they want to go through real quick? Because, again, there's 672,000 shows that you can get your news from. I don't think we really need to hit on any of it.
Nah, I'm scared of talking this week, so I'll pass.
Okay, Billy's scared of talking this week. All right, let's talk about running backs. So right now, of course, don't worry, we're going to do the waiver wire game. We're going to do our player picks. We're going to do all that stuff. We're going to do that at the end of the show. I want to have as much time as we can dedicated to this running back discussion. Because when we talk, we tend to go long unless there's only two of us here for some strange reason. We'll get that figured out. But right now, we're going in. The big topic of the day is running backs. Top 12, top 15, who's in, who's not, who was and who isn't anymore. Trading for running backs can be difficult. I know Billy and we went back and forth for about a week straight. Couldn't get anything hammered out. We're going to try again this week and see what we can get done. But running backs change a lot. Jakob, you get this a ton in the Bulletproof Discord. And you guys on Sweat and Bullets just kind of had a discussion about 2023 running backs. So this should be like front of the mind for you. It obviously changes. It is a fluctuating position. Let's look at the 2018 top 12 running backs drafted. This is all according to DLF. All right. This is how nuts it is. Just less than 4 full years ago. Todd Gurley was the number 1, Zeke 2, Barkley 3, David Johnson 4, Kamara 5, Lev Bell 6, Dalvin Cook 7, Kareem Hunt 8, Melvin Gordon 9, Leonard Fournette 10, a young stud Christian McCaffrey, 11, and Joe Mixon, number 12. Some funny names: 13 Devonta Freeman, 14 Jordan Howard, 15 Kerryon Johnson, 16 Jerick McKinnon. How absolutely disgusting that list is. And then, of course, you go into, oh my goodness, sorry. You go into 2022, and it was Taylor, McCaffrey. Like, check for the names that you heard more than once here. Taylor, McCaffrey, Swift, Eckler, Najee, Javonte, Saquon, Cook, Henry, Brees, and Mixon. And we've lost Jacob. Jacob will be back in a minute. That's a very different top 12 list, Billy.
Yeah. I mean, that's also just the world of running back. I mean,
exactly
the shelf life of all these players, which we talk about every year when we talk about Dynasty. The shelf life of running backs is low. I mean, it's one of the larger injury-prone positions in the league. It's one of the positions that wears your body down the most. And because of that, that's where we see these running backs kind of fall off a cliff. Like, you can make a strong argument to say if we did this same exercise for just about any position, we'd see similar amounts of turnover. I mean, think about what the wide receiver 1 picks in 2018 probably were. I mean, I don't have the information off the top of my head, but Antonio Brown, Julio Jones,
Lucas, we know what to get on next.
Yeah, like those players, like the turnover at the position in all these situations is going to be similar, because the bulk of the time, a lot of these like peak fantasy assets usually only have 2 to 3 years of like peak production at these levels. But what interests me a lot is some of the names we still hear like consistently coming up today: Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Kamara. Like, these are players that have been able to maintain a significant workload and remain healthy. I mean, Dalvin Cook had the injury-prone tag for a long time. He missed a lot of games early on in his career, and now all of a sudden he's one of the largest workhorses in the league.
Right.
Like, it is very interesting to look back at these guys and see how things have changed, where some of them are still in the league. I mean, Kareem Hunt, Melvin Gordon obviously are now in backup roles. Le'Veon Bell is fighting Adrian Peterson. Like,
exactly.
It's a weird turnover.
There's only a couple of names that appear like in 2020. Saquon Barkley, he was 7. He's been a top 12 the whole time.
Alvin Kamara, he was also a child when
sure
like 2018 happened.
Alvin Kamara, 14, finally fell out of the top 12 this year.
Coming off a great rookie year.
Exactly. Joe Mixon, who was outside of the top 12 last year, gets back in barely at 12. Nick Chubb seems to forever perennially live on the border of top 12 after his rookie year. But even guys like Henry, 19, 23, 9, 7, and 9. Okay, we understand his story. He's an outlier. Swift was the RB 17 and then the RB 9. So he obviously boosted up. McCaffrey. But you look at some of these names and some of these guys that potentially are out of this top 12. Austin Eckler already out of the top 12. Right? Potentially can be outside of the top. We'll say outside of the top 12 after this year, more than likely, due to his age. But Dalvin Cook looks cooked. Derrick Henry, he's old. Have you tried trading away Derrick Henry right now? It is almost impossible to get anything of value for him. And then you look at some of these guys that were drafted in the top 12 last year that are already falling out of favor. Antonio Gibson, J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. ETN took a hit, obviously, with the injury. It's already shaping up to be difficult to have these guys in the top 12. That's what I feel like today will be so crucial and so important too. 1 second. I'm just getting an update from Jacob, who is having Wi-Fi issues with his laptop. That's okay. Billy, you and I, we got this.
Yeah.
He'll try to bring it back as soon as he can.
Yeah.
Obviously. But hang in there, Jacob. For sure. So this is why I think it's important. Everyone always says young RB good, old RB bad. But that doesn't actually solve a lot of the problems. We obviously understand that draft picks are inherently valuable. So I just want to walk you through, out of this top 12, and I was going to get Jacobs as well. I do have his tweet just in case that he put out what his, like, who in this list that's in the top 12 right now, and I'm going to read off the 2022 top 12 just in case people don't actually know. Obviously, Taylor was number one. Could go down as the worst RB1 selection in recent memory, given this year, injury, how the team looks.
That's the case.
I mean, RB1 overall, I think he's had one game where that's cashed in for you. So right now, tough to say. He already had possibly the worst RB1 finish overall in a long time. I think we all knew that. That was discussed at length all last year in the offseason. Christian McCaffrey rounded out the number 2. I highly doubt he stays there very long. He's probably on his way to in that mid to late top 12 for sure. DeAndre Swift, obviously great player, also hurt. He's young enough, explosive enough, catches passes. He'll be there in the top 5. Austin Eckler, his age, his production is gone down, even though he's been efficient. Okay, we'll have to watch. Najee Harris is probably going to stay up there long enough just because he's too new in the league, and there are people that still believe. Even though you and me, we're not so happy with Najee Harris. Javonte Williams' injury, does he stay at 6? Does he stay in the top 10? We don't know. Saquon Barkley, he's kind of resurging this year. Very easily could be inside that top 10, middle top 10. Who knows? Interesting to see your take on that one. I've been calling Dalvin cooked because God does he look cooked. That offense is not being kind to him. He is not catching passes. He's basically becoming volume/touchdown dependent. And the forced missed tackles aren't there. I tweeted this out on, I believe, last night. Kenneth Walker has as many forced missed tackles as Dalvin Cook already has on the season. That's not very elusive for Dalvin Cook, so we don't like to see that. Derrick Henry coming in at 9. I don't see any way in hell, no matter how he finishes the season, that he finishes as top 12 next year. And then, of course, Breece Hall at 10, Joe Mixon 11, and Nick Chubb at 12. And then I just want to shout them out. Etienne, Kamara, Aaron Jones, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins round out the top 18. Billy, that's a scary fucking list. That's a scary list to me. So I ask you this, sir. Who's falling out of here next year? I'm not even going to ask you at this point, who are you putting in that's not in? But legitimately, who do you think has the staying power? What will they have to do to maintain that staying power in that top 12?
Yeah, I think there's, at least going off of what we expect ADP to be, I think we have this certain expectation of players falling out, like climbing up. And I think a lot of that is really easy to do right now. Like right now, Dalvin Cook has been one of the most historically efficient running backs, one of the most pure workhorses in the league over the last 5 years. And he's had a rough start to the season, and we're all of a sudden catapulting him out. Derrick Henry, one of the best running backs, period, that we've seen in the last 5 years, out. Doesn't matter. I think what we need to look back on is take into account what these, I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase what I want to say. What a good season will do for a player's sustained value. Take a look for an option at Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey in the 2019 season had the best fantasy season ever. Like, there's some variation with points, but whatever. The best fantasy season, at least in recent memory. Now you go back 2020, number 1 overall pick with a bullet. Easy. And all of a sudden, falls off a cliff. Injured, done. Doesn't play the rest of the season consistently. 2021, comes back. First round pick, number 1 overall with a bullet.
Absolutely.
Easy.
Yep.
Easy. Christian McCaffrey, same deal. Injured, consistently out, not a strong player for your fantasy team. 2022 was the first season he was not the number one overall pick based strictly off of that 2019 season. Think of how much has changed in the world since 2019.
So I'll only push back on this. In 2019, he was already the number 2 overall.
Sure.
Based on the tail end of what he did in his rookie year.
Yes, yeah. Which my point is what a season like what Najee Harris did last year, what Austin Eckler did last year, and is probably going to continue doing this year. What those will do to keep a player sustained moving forward. Saquon Barkley, phenomenal player, tore his ACL. Very, very, very unfortunate. And yet, here we are, 2 years removed, did not look good last year, tore his ACL in 2020, and he was a top 7 running back. Like, this is such an interesting situation because we can go back and talk about what these guys do, but I think we need to also keep in mind the sort of staying power that occurs in the kind of hive mind of fantasy. Because players like what Najee Harris did with his significant target share, inefficient but serious workload, stuff like that is going to stay in the back of players' minds because so many players were right on Najee Harris. They took the shot. They said, you know what, Dynasty, I'm drafting early. I'm taking Najee Harris early. And that paid off in spades. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I think Najee Harris is going to stay. I think he could finish outside the top 24 this year. And next year, they're going to come in. They're going to say, oh, it's Pickett's first year. They started with Trubisky. He was banged up. He was injured. He had an ankle problem. They drafted no lineman. I think Najee Harris is easily a top 8 running back. I don't agree with that, but I think that's going to be the case. And I think we're going to see similar things with players like specifically Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley, Javonte Williams to an extent, Austin Eckler for sure, especially with the pace he's on, and Christian McCaffrey. The only players I see with a legitimate, very serious chance in terms of ADP, not your rankings, my rankings, Jakob rankings, anything like that. According to the consensus that I think are very likely to move out of this range are Henry, Cook, and maybe Kamara. And keep in mind, Kamara is outside the top 12 right now. The only reason that occurred was because there was suspicion that he may get suspended this year.
Which is weird because the suspension is very much coming next year. So like that, You're right. It should have been. And also Kamara's not really produced though. So it's almost been warranted if you look at it. If you want to use hindsight, he hasn't been great.
I think Kamara's been pretty good. I mean, outside he's been a stinker, but since he's come back, he's been phenomenal. Oh, right. I heard a click.
Yeah.
This is from my iPhone because apparently I have to I've been on the Apple support website, and apparently I'm reinstalling my Mac operating system.
Oh, nice.
So, point being, there is no shot that I would be getting onto my computer again anytime soon. So as I reinstall my OS, which apparently doesn't have enough anyway, I'm having some computer issues. Point is, I'm here for the meantime.
So that's what matters.
To wrap up the very long-winded thing that I just went on that Jakob missed all of, I think like the main players that are going to move out are maybe Cook if he doesn't get that workload that he was getting.
Cook's, yep.
Henry, maybe Harris, but I doubt it. Eckler, I think, is going to stay in just because players want what Eckler can provide. And like these players that seem like clear outliers in how they win, I think are the ones that are going to move out. Nick Chubb, doing great this year. Probably going to stay in that top 12. Joe Mixon, significant workload. And next year, as soon as we go into the draft, they're going to draft an O-lineman. The offense is phenomenal. Joe Mixon is going to have every opportunity in the world to score. Like these narratives that kind of permeate around a player forever are what keep their ADPs high. We've seen this with DJ Moore consistently, where it's Sam Darnold's the solution, Baker's the solution. Like these narratives that surround a player just based on the arc of their career keep ADPs in specific positions. So because of that's how I view these kind of developing next year.
Sure. So part of the reason why I almost semi-disagree with that is it seems like the minds of most fantasy players at this point is just fixated on age. And when it's not age, it's about, well, were they efficient or was it workload driven? Jacob, you were one of the guys that said that you were very surprised when you were talking to Drew about Todd Gurley, that we all just thought Todd Gurley was this amazing talent, can't miss. He was just phenomenal. But Todd Gurley got his production based almost purely on volume, not efficiency and not in anything other than volume. And I think that more and more fantasy players are getting more aware of this. Look, I think Dalvin Cooked, just piggybacking off, I think he is for sure out. He has fewer breakaway yards than Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Kenyon Drake so far in the season. It doesn't, and he had a long touchdown run just on Sunday. So some of those yards are, just off of that play alone. So people are going to look at, are the bursts, how did they get it? Joe Mixon is getting an insane amount of volume, horrifically inefficient. That dude's going to be 27 next year. I think these guys that are 27, 28 need to have an absolute booming end of their year to stay in this top 12 next year. Because as we're going to get into, there are prospects coming in that obviously are going to be there. Like we know Bijan, he's in. He's Dynasty RB1 the minute he's drafted, unless like Seattle takes him or something stupid, right? I think we can all agree on that. And then there's Brees and then Taylor. Like we know those guys are in. But we're going to talk about some guys on the outside looking in that I think if they absolutely ball out, Ramondre Stevenson, can find their way creeping into that potential top 12 spot, which is going to knock some of those Joe Mixon and Dalvin Cooks down. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Here's some players, Jacob. We were talking about the 2018 and 19 draft position for some of these guys. So here's some players that I think are going to be the next to follow in the lines of Devonta Freeman, Kareem Hunt, Jordan Howard, all guys that were previously drafted in the top 12 just a few short years ago, not even 4 full years ago, or 5 full years ago. Some of these guys were in the top 12. So I think Austin Eckler, he's falling out of the top 10. I think Barkley will find his way back into the top 5. Someone switched that on me. Sorry, I got it. We're good. Dalvin Cook, I think Dalvin Cook is out of the top 12, period. Derrick Henry, he's out of the top 12. Joe Mixon, he's out of the top 12. Nick Chubb, he'll be out of the top 12. Kamara will stay out of the top 12. I just don't see a world where those 5 backs are staying in the top 12. They're going to be in the Leonard Fournette range as of next year. I just don't see any other way, unless, like Billy said, they have some sort of insane late season surge that sticks in people's minds. But I think the age narrative is taken over now. I really do.
I mean, I think Billy. So I was listening to some of the names you thought would be still in there, right? You said Chubb, I think you said Eckler, you said Mixon. My question for you then is like, who's coming out then? Because so if you're counting those names, to me, then it sounds like there's almost more than 12 running backs, or you're slow rolling the rookies a lot. Because I think the way that I'm trying to count through the 12, right? I think Brees and Walker at least are going to be in there, right? Do we agree on that?
Have to be.
Right. Sure. Taylor, Swift, they've got to be in there. And then I think Bijan and Gibbs are locks coming before they even play down. Now, I'll probably have a couple more, but maybe the market will not. That's probably the case. I'm not sure how much room there is for these other rookies. And then I think what it really makes me question is how much room there is for the other vets. And what I think is going to be the fascinating part is what about this little injury crew? And what about this little breakout crew, right? Like the injury crew being Javonte, who just got injured, and then Etienne and Dobbins, who are the young guys coming off a year of injury. in which, we have Dobbins was not healthy, then he's healthy, then he's not healthy again. Who knows what his season's going to amount to? ETN is certainly trending upward, but still locked in that timeshare with James Robinson. And then Javonte, and everything that he's got going on. And then those breakout guys like a Damian Pierce, who's a younger guy that's maybe not quite as much of a slam dunk as Kenneth Walker. But when I put out my top 10 running backs and I didn't have Damian Pierce in it, there was no name that was more universally brought up as how can you not have this guy in your top 10 than Damian Pierce. And, there's other guys, Ramondre Stevenson, is a sexy breakout pick, right? So if any of these guys make it in, I think it's going to be tough for a lot of these vets to stay in there. Personally, in my own top 12, not like my projection of what the markets will be, I have Christian McCaffrey in there. I have Saquon Barkley in there. Those are the only two running backs that I have in my top 12 going into next year that are playing on contract number 2. Personally, I have Cook out. I have Eckler out. I have Chubb out. I have Kamara out. Mixon out. Where I ended up coming to was I have CMC Barkley, Taylor Swift from that, and Dobbins I also have in there from that 2020 class.
Interesting. I have Robinson still. He's not in for me.
I have ETN in that mix, and actually he's the only one that I have in my top 12 from the 2021 running back draft class. I have Walker and Hall, and then I've saved 4 spots for incoming 2023 rookies, which are Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Zach Evans, and Sean Tucker. Now, that's probably the hotter take. I expect that Evans and Tucker will probably not be in the market's top 12, and probably they'll go some of the older guys or Najee Harris or Javonte Williams. But, I'm tending to get ahead of the market on these rookies, and that's where I'm at on this one. But I'd love to talk how you guys feel about Pierce, too. I know that was one that I kind of breezed past.
Yeah, but that's part of it too, right? So if you're going to have some of these guys, I think the 27 and ups are out. The way that fantasy players are working now, because even just now, try trading away these guys. It's damn near impossible to get anything that you thought you might be able to. That's one of the reasons I'm basing this off of. And you're right. Let's not forget too that there was supposed to be this year in the top 12 guys like Cam Akers, Antonio Gibson, like you said, J.K. Dobbins. All moving, AJ Dillon, all moving their way up into this upper tier that have stunted. And I think that saved some of these vets in their draft position. I think these injuries and question marks saved some of these guys, in my opinion. And now you're right. You got 2023 guys. Stevenson and Pierce are the 2 guys I want to talk about. Because you did, Jacob. You got a lot of Pierce pushback over Pierce, and Stevenson's a sexy name as well. If you're coming down to draft time next year and you're staring at RB 12, 13, 14, 15, I mean, if Stevenson continues to break out and Pierce maintains what he's doing, and maybe Leonard Fournette gets hurt, we know we got Depeche asking how we view Rachaad White. I'm going to talk about Rachaad White right away. If Leonard Fournette gets hurt and Rachaad White breaks out for the second half of the year, Singletary gets hurt and James Cook breaks out in the second half of the year, that 12, that we'll even say 10 to 16 range, how many are going to rather reach for the young guys than take somebody like a Mixon or on their second year, the second contracts like you had mentioned? I think it's worth noting that age is going to push these guys out. I'll keep saying it. I think it's going to be mostly age. Bill, you disagree. Why do you disagree?
I agree in terms of our rankings. I think as we talk as individuals, I mean, I'm more than happy to throw a lot of these older backs, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, especially the ones that don't pass catches, or catch passes.
Thank you. I was like, wait hold on a minute.
Catch passes out. But I mean, let's just look at this year. Like this year, we had a prospect that was arguably, keep in mind, arguably, in the same tier as a prospect as Saquon, Jonathan Taylor, and what we all think Bijan Robinson could be. And that prospect was Breece Hall. Breece Hall is currently the second youngest running back in the league.
Mm-hmm.
He was drafted as RB10.
because of the Jets. I guarantee it was because of the Jets.
Sure.
But I think this is a big difference between like some leagues and other leagues, right? Like there was not a startup that I was in all spring and summer in which Breece Hall was not a top 5 running back off the board.
Yes, but my point is like these rankings, like this database that we pulled from, like if we end up looking at this next year, I guarantee players like Eckler, who are on these hot streaks, are going to still be in there. And we can even look this last year, sit of the top 12. I mean, a quarter of them were over the age of 27 at the time we were drafting them. Like these players that are, because the problem with running back is exactly what we're doing right now. Like this is 100% the issue. Prior to the draft, did we really care about Dameon Pierce? Did we, until he started getting all this love in training camp? Think about Ramondre Stevenson. We talked so much trash about him as a prospect. The problem is looking at all these things that we got wrong and having to go, do I run the risk of taking this player 6 rounds later when I know I can go ahead and get this player that we know is going to get this workload, that we know is going to produce for fantasy, because it is so easy at the running back position to just be wrong and sink your fantasy season. Think about Ronald Jones. Clyde Edwards-Helaire in 2020 is a beautiful one. Like it is so easy to just sink your fantasy season on running back. And I think a lot of players are very aware of that now. And because of that, these players that have these guaranteed situations, Derrick Henry is an absolute perfect example of this, are going to keep their value propped up because we know what he is. When Derrick Henry is healthy, he is producing as the entire Tennessee Titans offense.
So I think I could not disagree with this more. I think I could disagree with you. So I agree with you in the sense of like what the DLF rankings will be. That's fine. Honestly, I don't. That wasn't really like my goal in this is not like projecting what the DLF rankings will be next year. I quite honestly, I don't care. But I do think in terms of like where I would want to be on some of these guys, and in terms of the risk factor, there is not a more profitable, consistent investment than a rookie running back with a good prospect profile and a good draft capital. Like sometimes they go wrong in year 2 and year 3, but just think of the examples from Kerryon Johnson to Sony Michel to Miles Sanders to Josh Jacobs to Cam Akers to J.K. Dobbins to Javonte Williams now potentially, where these are running backs that didn't even really accomplish anything in their rookie year in terms of like they weren't winning you any titles in your rookie year, and they all went up in value massively going into year 2. Like you are getting these guys, you're getting a ton of profit of these guys, and maybe you end up catching a Hall or you end up catching a Taylor, but in terms of value accrual from year 1 to year 2, like if you get the good draft capital running back with a strong enough profile, you're usually laughing to the bank at least year 1, year 2, and then you get to decide, do I want to flip this guy or do I want to keep this guy? Because oftentimes these eventually go up in smoke, where like the Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders career arc is so perfect in the sense that they had like fine enough rookie seasons, they get tons of helium in the off season, and then they have kind of the same year that they had the next year, but they drop a lot in value because people are expecting a big step, and they drop a lot of value again in year 3, even though they're still kind of the same thing they've always been. And now, there are probably values this year, even though they've mostly been the same guy all along. It's just their value went way up and then it goes way down. Like, I think we're seeing that with Najee Harris now. I think there's a time, probably in a couple of years, where I'll be buying Najee Harris. But, it wasn't this offseason. It probably still isn't today. It wouldn't surprise me if Ken Walker follows a similar thing where he's the RB6 in Dynasty at the end of this season. And then I'm probably don't want any part of it. And then he's the RB12 the next year. And then he's the RB20 and then, then he becomes a value. I want to be buying these rookie profiles because they do tend to accrue value as long as they're not terrible. Like as long as they don't suffer a devastating injury, or they're not Ronald Jones, where he just didn't even touch the field as a rookie. But,
right.
The bar isn't that high when you look at, the Sanders or the Javonte or the Kerryon or the Sony Michel, etc., that I really want to be on these rookies in terms of accruing value. because I don't think the older guys are that safe. It's safer as long as they produce. But I mean, look at Le'Veon Bell or David Johnson. I don't think it's guaranteed. I think these guys have guaranteed workloads and guaranteed value, but on a week-to-week basis. Like if Dalvin Cook tears his ACL tomorrow, like it's over.
Yes.
Like it's literally over, right? Like they're not resilient in the sense that like Javonte Williams, right? Worst case scenario, multi-ligament tear in week 4 of his season. And you can still trade him for a first-round pick today.
Yes.
Look, yes, I should immediately clarify. I'm discussing what I think the consensus rankings are going to be next year, and why I think some of these older prospects are still going to be sitting there. Because players like Mixon, players like Chubb, Eckler, they keep these kind of permeating narrative around them. Whereas me personally, I don't really want to be going out and buying these players. I, like you said, want players like Brees, like Taylor, like Walker, like Swift, even players like Ramondre or Pierce that I may not be ready to go, yeah, Dynasty, put him in a top 10 right now. I may not be ready to do that, but I would be so happy right now to go off and be able to get those players, because I think their step moving forward is going to be so much bigger than any value you're getting from these older players.
So I think part of the reason, I think Ezekiel Elliott's put a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. I think Zeke was kind of the first stone to fall in this regard, where he's getting the volume, he's got the contract, the offense is good, and then slowly and surely you're starting to see kinks in the armor. He's starting to fall apart, and now coming into this year, as Jacob has wanted for the last 4 years, they're actually splitting it. And I think that when you get to the age of some of these guys, I think everyone's just waiting for the slowdown. And I think it was Jacob, I believe it was you on the Wednesday show with Chase and Shane, where you had said that once you start to see kind of the variance in these older running backs, then it's time to get out. And I think you're seeing that with guys like Mixon, who seems to be super inefficient, not as agile this year. Dalvin Cook, who I've explained a couple of times, where I tweeted.
You called him Dalvin Cooked.
Dalvin Cooked. I've been saying it for a couple of weeks now. And I tweeted, like I said, mentioned earlier, I tweeted that he has the same amount of forced missed tackles as Kenneth Walker on half of the attempts this year. He doesn't look as I think you're starting to see the problems with some of these running backs, whether it's situational, scheme, who knows? But it's hard to get that taste out of people's mouths, especially, again, trying to actively go and trade these guys away. I think you're kind of stuck with taking a value L if you're holding these guys.
Yeah,
I think that sorry.
I'll be quick. I think Joe Mixon is the perfect perfect stereotype for what we're discussing. Joe Mixon in ADP since 2018 has been the RB12, 9, 10, 14, 11. In that time, he's had fantasy finishes of 34, 10, 13, 49, 4, 12. Like that entire time, and I guarantee you, I'll put whatever bet we want to put right now, Joe Mixon is a top 12 running back next year, barring like severe injury. Because we're just going to play the same game. Bengals have the best offense in the league. They just need no line. They get no line. Mixon's getting 20 touchdowns a year. It's this same kind of permeating idea around these players, and it's just going to stick with them moving forward. So I think that's exactly correct. These players tend to hang around despite players not wanting to kind of take care of them. Jacob?
Yeah, I think so. I'll finish on this, and then I really got to call Apple and figure out what the hell is happening with my computer. But so I'm sorry that I'm barely a part of this one. I was honestly really pumped to be on this episode until my computer stopped functioning.
We will have more running back chatter for sure.
But yeah, I've talked about the canary in the coal mine effect, and unfortunately, it is kind of case by case. I think with Zeke, you saw the perfect storm or the imperfect storm, where what I've mentioned is usually you start to see decline show up in the efficiency before it shows up in fantasy value, because we know that hashtag running backs don't matter, in the sense that if you give any running back enough volume, right, and they catch enough passes and they get goal line work, they're going to be just fine. So if Zeke was still getting the volume he was getting in 2018, even though he's bad now or whatever, he would still be an RB1 because that's just how it goes, right? We saw CJ Anderson be an RB1 in the same role as Todd Gurley.
And that's been the bad faith argument with Zeke over the last 2 years. Well, he was the RB8 or is the RB6, but was he really?
Well, and he wasn't in points per game. But if he was actually getting the same volume, he actually would be in points per game. Like, he actually would be an RB1 in points per game if he was getting the same volume that he was getting in 2018, right? And we literally saw this in 2019. Like, his 2019 season, there was no, like, excuses. Pollard wasn't working in, really. Only when Zeke needed a Gatorade. Like, and Dak was there the whole year. The offense was functional. And he was bad on an efficiency basis. Like, that's the year when he became a no longer efficient running back. And he was still an RB1. Overall, points per game, whatever you want to measure by, he was an RB1. He was one of the top 12 running backs on a weekly basis in fantasy scoring because he had the role. And that was the canary in the coal mine season, because then you get into 2020 and 2021 and 2022 where, you know, Tony Pollard starts working in more. The O-line has some struggles in 2020. And then it's the response, right? It's like eventually the team realizes this guy isn't actually that good anymore. And that's when he was no longer an RB1 in points per game. And then this year, you know, it doesn't look like any sort of points per game or overall is going to save him. I mean, he's not going to be anywhere close to an RB1. But that's because he's no longer getting the touches. I think with a lot of these guys, that's kind of how you have to view it is once the talent starts to atrophy, and we've seen this with like a Dalvin Cooked, for example, where he used to be one of the best running backs in the league, not just in fantasy, but in actuality. He was a running back who mattered to some extent. And now he's not. Now he's not. He's no longer that guy. Is it going to matter next week? Probably not. Is it even going to matter this season? Probably only a little bit. Only a little bit at the margins. But it is the kind of thing where you now have to risk that at any point in time, a team could rationally take away his touches. Now, Joe Mixon has been ineffective pretty much his entire career, and the Bengals have never cared. That's fine. That can continue. Leonard Fournette, you know, has been bad pretty much wherever he's been in terms of efficiency. It doesn't matter. He gets a million high-value touches, and it's going to matter. But the big thing that I would state from this, I guess, is that I want to buy at efficiency when it's priced in, and I want to sell it when it's not priced in the sense that, like, Leonard Fournette this offseason was priced way lower down than all the rest of these running backs, like a Cook and a Kamara and an Eckler, etc. Even though he's basically the same age. Like, or at least he's to the same age to the extent that once you're kind of over 26, you're on a game-to-game basis, as in you don't have that value insurance anymore. If something bad happens, if you break a leg, if your team cuts you, whatever else, you don't get back up off the mat. And I was like, why is Fournette so much cheaper? And it was like, well, because he's bad. Well, yeah, he is. But also, all these other running backs are either already shown talent atrophy, or they were probably going to soon, or whatever else. But Lenny was the one where it was fully priced in, and so he's the one that I'm buying. It's kind of the same thing with like a Najee, you know, where he was priced really high this year. And then you look at like a Jacobs, who's the same age. And Jacobs, I actually don't think is bad. I also don't think he's like good. He's actually been really good this year. But over the course of his career, he's mostly been kind of average in terms of efficiency. It's not that bad, not that good, just whatever.
Touchdown or die, basically.
And it's like, why is Najee like so much more expensive than a Josh Jacobs? And a lot of it's just that appeal where these young guys get this artificial boost. And I guarantee you, if Najee ever does become a 7th, 8th round startup pick in 2 years, when his like quote unquote badness and grossness or whatever else is priced in, I'll be buying Najee Harris.
Right.
But I want to buy these guys who are the workhorses, who have the capacity for all this volume, when people are acting like they totally suck and they're dust and they're gross. But when they actually are that way, but they're being priced like they aren't that way, that's when I want to invest elsewhere. I have to call Apple because I can't seem to do anything with my OS, and this is driving me a little bit crazy. But it's always a pleasure, and I hope to talk with you guys again soon, as in next week. And I'm sure you'll have a great time for the rest of the episode. And for people, I'm super sorry that I've given like half an episode the last 2 weeks because I was really looking forward to this one, but this sucks.
Hey, take care of it. I'll handle your picks and everything.
Peace, bud.
Yeah, you already have them in the sheet. Okay, bye.
Awesome. See you, buddy. Guys, oh god damn it, Billy. All right, there we go.
I was seeing it first.
The poor guy. The technology is dumb, man. It's really dumb. But I think he's right in that I'm gonna talk about his takes. He's not here to defend them, and that's how it works on this program because I push the buttons. But when you're looking at these running backs, I think he hits the point where they need to be appropriately priced, and that's really hard for people to do. Now, it's definitely a game of I'd rather be out a year early than a year late, and I think that's where when me and you were talking about I think the old guys aren't going to be there, and you do. I think that's where the general battle is coming with that's where the battle is coming internally with a lot of fantasy managers in and of itself. People don't want to get rid of the running back a year early. They want to just hold like to that last second, but we're already seeing people trying to sell off Najee and not be able to do it. So that's where I think that the older guys like Eckler needs to maintain his reception pace because even before last year where he had all those touchdowns on the goal line, he was, hopefully he needs the goal line work to be unlocked, right? Eckler, RB 67, 35, 13, 16, and this year was the RB4. So it wasn't until he got that ridiculous goal line workload that he was actually taken in that top 12. He had a 90 reception season already under his belt, a top 5 finish under his belt. I don't know what his points per game were outside of that one big year because I don't have it up right now, but it took that to get Eckler in. So if Eckler starts giving up to Josh Kelly, to Sony Michel in the goal line more this year, maybe they actually activate supposed rookie RB2 Isaiah Spiller finally, and he starts working into the goal line, or Eckler gets hurt. It'll be hard to put him back in the top 12 again, regardless of what he did in 2021.
So I want to wrap this up because we've been going on this for 40 minutes now.
Sure.
And kind of summarize my thoughts. Sure. So CMC is going to stay in the top 12 for a long time. 100%. He was phenomenal. He's going to stay in the top 12 for next year easily, probably the year after that. Like, that's the case.
To the Chiefs? Oh, my God.
Here is, I think, the summarizing thoughts that I think this summarizes what you, me, Jacob, we're all trying to say. You want CMC. You always want CMC. The problem is you want CMC 3 years ago. You want him at the start of his peak so you can sit on him moving forward. When you're looking at guys like Ramondre, like Pierce, like Bijan, like Gibbs, Tucker, right, Bigsby, all these players, Travion Henderson, those players are still on the start of that curve. Those players could end up at that CMC level, or they do a David Johnson and have a phenomenal year and then kind of dissipate. The point is, all the options that you don't have right now, if you have Derrick Henry, you're going to have in 3 years if you own Pierce, if you own Ramondre, because these early narratives, what a player does early in their career remains with that player moving forward. Like, it is always better to get in early on these players. Mm-hmm. And maybe you're wrong on some of them. Sure, we're all going to be wrong. Fantasy is probably 60% luck. But if you can get in early on these players, that is always going to be better than buying a 26-year-old running back for a year because you know he's going to get you points.
Okay, now I agree on that, and I love your summary. But what you just said is leading me to ask you a question. So, what if getting in early on these running backs comes at the expense of getting out early on some of these aging backs? What if it's trade Dalvin Cooked for a 24-1? Trade Joe Mixon for a 24-1. Trade Derrick Henry. Christ, if you can get a 1 for him, which is actually difficult. But if let's say he has a big blow-up game this week or in the next 2 weeks or for the next 3 weeks and you get a 1 for him. To get in early on these guys, you have to be predictive, not reactive. And I think that's a part of fantasy football that gets missed. And it takes some cojones to do that. So I think that's the line for our conversation. I think is that right there. When are you willing to cut bait to get ahead in your dynasty leagues?
Yep, and that is where the art comes in. This is what we're always trying to battle. This is what I was saying last year with Najee. Najee had a great year. Last year is probably the best year in Najee's career. I would put strong money down that last year is his best year of his career. Henry, Eckler, Mixon, these players that are probably going to be fantasy relevant and consensus top 15 picks. Give them whatever ranking you want. Probably not Henry, but the other guys probably consensus top 15 picks the next couple of years. You need to be able to just take a hit on these guys. If you are not active, and this is what everyone says in fantasy, if you are finishing as the 7th team in your 12-team league, you are playing fantasy wrong. Because 7 and 12 is the exact same position, just 12 gets the better draft pick.
Right.
You need to be able to say, you know what? This isn't my year.
Yes.
I need to throw this player out.
Yep.
And unless you're actively competing for a title, there is no reason these, 27-year-old running backs should be on your roster. Because, that is how you end up holding the bag. I don't know about that, Matthew, but
go for 23 is Melvin Gordon. Hey, when it comes to the satire, that is how, if you look to Twitter for all your information, that is what they'll tell you.
Yeah. And look, it's not true. It's not true.
I think
Eckler this year is probably going to push to be a top 5 running back at lowest. Fournette is going to push to be a top 5 running back.
He could push to be top 1, honestly.
Yeah, Fournette could be the number 1 running back if their offense can run. This is where we are. If you are a bad team, there's no reason to have these players because we know you're not going to get a 30-year-old running back who's doing great. Todd Gurley looked like the man, the myth, the legend. Todd Gurley.
Oh, those Riddick knees.
Tom, how old do you think Todd Gurley is right now? Don't look.
37 and a half years old.
Yeah. Todd Gurley turned 28 in August.
Yeah.
I had he's been unimportant for 3 years now.
I know. It's insane.
And also, I should clarify, Todd Gurley did have a legitimate.
He's got regular person knees. All right, he's got the same knees I have when I wake up in the morning and need help out of bed because my knees are getting the Riddick because it's getting cold now. That's unfortunately what an elite athlete also has to go through.
Not every player is going to have the crazy drop off that Todd Gurley has, but once you see these players start to fall off, you hit the sunk cost fallacy.
Exactly,
where you could cut bait right now and get a late first, and you know what? That's a good result.
So here's the thing too. Like you said, we've been talking about this for a while because every time we ended it, it keeps going up. What I want from you, Billy, is I want one take when it comes to the top 12 next year. I want a spicy player you think is in for sure. Lock it in so we can look back on this and see if we were right or not when we do the end of year wrap up. Who do you think is going to play their way into the top 12 that isn't a favorite to be there come the end of the year / start of next year? Who is it going to be?
I think, and this is based off of how I think the team is going to do it. Maybe I'm biased. I think things are going to turn around for this team and how they use this player. And because of that, I think A.J. Dillon is going to sneak into the top 12 next year.
Interesting. Okay.
He's still young. He still has all the narratives around him. The team just doesn't want to use the running back. And that is a systematic problem with Green Bay. That is not a problem with A.J. Dillon. And I think that is something that isn't going to last.
He is catching passes too, which is like he had 6 targets twice this year, multiple games with 3. So they are targeting him. I think, if it might take an Aaron Jones injury.
Also, that got picked only because you said something spicy. I need to immediately clarify that. Do not go buy A.J. Dillon for a crazy price.
I'll say this. if there were going to be some players that I think are going to work their way in that are kind of on the outside looking in, I'll take some obvious ones. Okay, because my top 12 is going to look very Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Swift, Hall, Bijan, Gibbs. I think ETN gets in. Okay, I think that I do. I think ETN gets in. I think he gets back in. Oh my gosh, I lost where I was reading.
Sorry.
It's okay. I think Akers is out. Kenneth Walker is going to be in. I think Dameon Pierce sneaks in. Now, here's where it's going to get. I think if Leonard Fournette misses time and Rachaad White balls out, he'll be overdrafted. I think he'll sneak into the at least top 14. I think Stevenson, if he continues to ball out during this stretch of 4 or 5 games without Damian Harris, because Damian Harris, remember, he's on a walk year. If he survives the draft and he's the only man there, and he actually gets that role, I think Ramondre Stevenson, who's already being traded for first-round picks at this point, even 2 seconds to first-round picks, I think he's going to squeak in. That's the guy that I think at this point, if he continues to get the plus work and Damian Harris misses the time, like 5 weeks from now, it's still going to be the Ramondre Stevenson show, unless Ty Montgomery shows up and all of a sudden gets the ball out. I think my spicy pick for a player, it's going to be Ramondre Stevenson. One player we're leaving out of this is James Cook entirely, because I think he's an uphill battle for him as a young rookie.
I mean, Singletary might be there if
exactly. Exactly. But I think Stevenson, your pick of Dylan I like, but I think Stevenson is going to find his way in, and that leaves only like 3 spots.
This is an entirely separate conversation, and we don't need to go into it. Just watching Twitter throw out every narrative they've had about Ramondre Stevenson for the last 2 years has been so funny.
Oh, yeah.
I got nothing else to say here. That man ran a 4.7. Everyone left him for dead, and now all of a sudden,
I'll say this: I was told on Twitter that he would be Derrick Henry. He's going to have a Derrick Henry career arc. That I disagree with so much, but the production, if it's there and he keeps catching passes, I think he has a chance to finish as a top 12 running back this year. And if he does, I truly think that his ADP is going to get pushed into the top 12.
All right. Anyway, we need to get off this so we can do our things.
Hey, I got the buttons. All right. We're going to get there. Look, that was our running back conversation for today. We're going to end up touching back on that because I know Jacob has more to go on it. So we're going to touch up on that, but we need to move on. We didn't get the information for the waiver show, so I might have to do a separate video tomorrow to get the waiver information with Jacob's computer crashing. He has it, so not in my league. Will take place tomorrow.
He might not have it anymore. It might be wiped on.
It might be completely gone. But look, we're doing it. I'm still leading. We're going to do player picks. We're going to do that right away. It's really easy. We have a little competition that we do here that I am winning. My lead has shrunk to 5 points, but we're maintaining Jacob, even because he's not here. I'm going to talk shit. He is last because he's terrible at this, period. Although Lucas last week filling in for him, he helped him get him caught up. All right. So last week, I'll go with Jacob. Last week, Jacob started Danny Dimes, Connor / Eno. The problem with Eno last week is that we have to remember that though Eno might be good, the Cardinals are bad. So a lot of people got
impressively bad.
They're impressively bad. Then he went Deontay Johnson, and then tight end. He got confused, so he ended up going with Evan Ingram. Didn't do too bad, but didn't do too great. This week, Jacob, quarterback, outside of the top 15. Ryan Tannehill, he's going with against the Colts. He's going Connor / Eno again for his running backs. We have to pick a running back outside of the top 15. So shout out to him. Wide receiver outside of the top 24. He's going Romeo Doubs. And his tight end this week outside of the top 10 is Dulcich. So Jacob needs to hit a home run to catch Billy and I right now. Jacob only has
You need to start
200
giving him like tight end premium points.
200.68 points on the year. He is over 120 points behind second place Billy. Billy, hit us with your picks, man.
Yeah, so last week I took Matt Ryan. Turned out to be a great call. Raheem Mostert, disappointing. Devonta Smith, good. Irv Smith, good. He caught a touchdown. That's all you need. This week, I'm taking the Patriots quarterback. I don't care if it's Zappy, Matt. That's who I want.
Okay.
Also, I'm taking Zeke. Zeke is going on this tear right now where he's hitting the Lions, the Bears, the Packers, the Vikings.
Oh, my. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Look, Zeke is probably going to have a good stretch here coming up. Wandale, he's the only guy there for the Giants, and they have a good matchup this week. I think Wandale's going to have a good showing. And finally, Tunyon. I think with Randall Cobb going out, Tunyon's going to take a lot more of that intermediate level passing. I think Tunyon's going to have a really good week.
You stole mine. I was looking for Tunyon, and I looked up, and I was like, oh, no. You got him. I love those picks. Last week for me, I feel like it went okay. It went pretty good. It maintained my lead. Didn't do great. I went Jimmy G, who actually had a pretty good game, 18.9 points. Kenny Walker, 19 points. Love that. Jacoby Myers, his solid 10 points. Love that. Unfortunately,
very Jacoby stat line.
Very Jacoby.
4 for 60.
I snuck in Will Dissly somehow trying to outsmart myself, and it fucking backfired so miserably. So see you later, Will Dissly. I'm never picking you again until you score another couple of touchdowns. Then I'll be right back in. Week 7, though, hey, I'm going back to Matt Ryan. The quarterback selections outside of the top 15, fucking terrible.
Yeah,
like they were. It was a dirty week. It's gonna be it's been a dirty week for quarterbacks. Every week it feels like in fantasy this year. This week feels especially gross. Guys like Fields having terrible matchups. I didn't even like the Tannehill matchup against the Colts. It's just ugly all around. So I'm going back to Matt Ryan. It seems like he's like a pick every week. This, of course, he's probably going to blow it. Because Billy went with Zeke, okay, I'm going with Tony fucking Pollard.
This was a very upsetting pick for me.
One of them is going to score a couple of touchdowns against this awful Lions team. And I'm betting on Pollard breaking off a couple because this team can't fucking stop anybody on the ground. So I'm going Pollard. That'll probably be the difference between who takes the lead here this year. So shout out for that. Wide receiver, I'm going with two old guys. So Keenan Allen, if he plays, he's my pick. And if DeAndre Hopkins, it'll depend. I'm not going to know which player I get until Sunday because Hopkins plays first. But doesn't matter. I'm going to say this on the show now. So next week I can't come in there and be like, that's not what I meant. I'm going to say this now. If Keenan Allen and DeAndre Hopkins both play and Hopkins does better, I can't have Hopkins points. Okay. I'm saying it now. I can't change it. Okay. I don't want to be accused of anything.
You can say it now. I'm holding you to it regardless. I don't care if you say it.
It's not a total dictatorship here on the show. So those are my picks at wide receiver. Jacoby Moore. I actually called him less fancy Deontay Johnson when I was trying to sell Jacoby Myers this week. That's basically what he is. And at tight end, I can't believe he's fallen this far, but Darren Waller, tight end 12. I'm picking Darren Waller. Hopefully he plays. If not, I don't know, Taysom Hill. I don't know. I haven't worked that out yet, but I'm going Waller. Those are the player picks for the week. Hopefully we maintain hopefully I maintain my lead. We're going to see what happens. All right, we're going to hit the underdog, and then we're getting the heck out of here. Sit tight. We're doing pick'ems. It's really easy. Underdog is a phenomenal website. You can go to underdogfantasy.com and get in on these pick'ems. You can get in on best ball. The NBA season tipped off tonight. So you're going to want to be able to get in on bets. If you've never played Underdog before, you go to the website, use promo code FULLTILT, FULLTILT, and they will deposit match you up to $100. And you can do what many people did last week, Billy, and win some money with us. So we have some picks here. I'm not sure if Jacob got to enter his yet. I do have one for him, so we're going to stick with that one. But basically what you can do is you can lock in these picks, times your money by 3, and win some. We're going to give you some of our favorite pick'em props for the week. I'm going to start with Jakob. Deebo Samuel over 60.5 receiving yards. They are playing the Chiefs. It should be high scoring. Deebo is the fucking man. We're hammering the over. Love the over with Deebo Samuel. Billy?
Yeah, I took Zach Wilson under 203.5 passing yards. The Broncos have only allowed more than 200 passing yards once this year when it wasn't an overtime game. And I'm not going to bet on overtime, and I'm not going to bet on Zach Wilson breaking that streak. So give me Zach Wilson under 200 passing yards.
That's interesting to me. I don't know. Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. We're going to go under on the Zach Wilson. We love that. And, of course, I'm going over Kenneth Walker's rushing yards, 65.5 yards. This is still the Seahawks. They still want to run the ball. Ken Walker almost went for 100 yards last week. I'm going to ride with him. It's an absolutely phenomenal player. I love it. You love it. We all love it. Like I said, just a great time. Hey, that's the show for today. Billy, final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah, fun discussion. I think this is something that is probably going to kind of permeate moving forward as how we view a lot of these different positions, because it feels like that's the one thing that's always changing in fantasy is how we view like individual positions. The quarterback was a late rounder. Now all of a sudden you can't win a game if you don't have Hurts, Allen, Mahomes, any of those guys. Tight end, you never picked an early tight end because they all sucked. And now all of a sudden you don't have them. Like the way you treat individual positions in fantasy feels like one of the more dynamic portions of this game. So it's always fun to talk about.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely love it, man. It just these discussions are always what's so important to me. And my final thought is this. There's going to be a lot of running backs names thrown around over the next 6 months leading up to the draft. There's going to be a ton of different names. And one name I want you to remember right here as a favorite of mine is Zach Charbonnet of UCLA. Oh. He is a senior. He is a baller. He doesn't fit the mold of speed but he's just a baller. I like him. I'm going to fall in love with him through the process. I just want that.
Jacob's about to be so pissed you my guide him.
I'm just saying he's one of my favorites right now. And I will tell you, there is a player I don't like that some other people do, and that's Blake Corum. So those are two players. Don't like Blake Corum, love Zach Charbonnet. Remember that there are people on the other side of your screens while you're out there on the Twitterverse. Can we try to just enjoy the football game? Stay out of the arguments. Enjoy the football games. The season comes and goes very quickly. I mean, look where we are in the season right now. Yeah, it's coming.
Third of the way through.
Exactly. It's going to be over in an instant. Enjoy it, even when the games are kind of terrible. Looking at you, Denver. Other than that, remember that clear eyes, full hearts can never lose, and your best days are always spent tilting. Go to Fantasy Pros. Go to Fantasy Points. And oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. Go to Fantasy Points right now. Log in. Register, enjoy your life, have fun. Good night, everybody.
Bijan.